First item on the agenda is our minutes. Are there any amendments or corrections to our minutes?
I make the motion we accept the minutes as presented.
I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by no. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda are accounts. There's no vote required. If you have any question on our accounts, please give us the page and the line item. Are there any questions on our account? Okay. Next item on the agenda is delegations. Before we call up the library, is there anyone else here that would like to address the city council on any issue? Okay, at this time I'd like to recognize the Chester County Library. Good evening.
How are y'all doing tonight?
Good.
So, I would like to come before y'all tonight. As some of you may know, we are attempting to get funding for an expansion of our library. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about our library in case you're not very familiar with it. The current building was built in 1995 and is currently about 900 square feet. About 1,600 square foot of this is used for offices, mechanical rooms, storage, restrooms, a small conference room, as well as a Tennessee room. The rest of that, 3,300 square feet approximately, is what we have for materials and programming space. Over the years, this building has served us great, but we have been growing at a very rapid rate. And quite frankly, we just need some more room. Some of you may have seen some pictures, and if you have not, I would encourage you to take a look at page, right before page 4 of your packet, between 3 and 4, and you can see the scale of some of, these are just story times. Some of these are during the summer, so when school is out, and some of these are during the school year. So we've got a lot of kids at school, but this is during the school year even, when we are a little bit less busy during the normal days, just to show you how many kids we have that we're servicing day to day. We have the whole Chester County. A lot of our patrons are City of Henderson users. Over the last year, we had 53,300 individuals enter our library and use our services. 53,300. We had over 32,300 items checked out. Items we offer are, of course, books, but we also have things like DVDs, cake pans. We have learning kits. These range from helping kids learn how to read, learn math skills, different science skills. We also have the audio books. We now have Wonder Books playways, things that read to the kids, but they read along with it, so they're really hearing it and seeing it at the same time. So we've expanded our services in terms of what we have physically in the library as well. As far as digital items, we circulated 19,900. So this is going to be a program we have called Libby. So these are ebooks we have, audio books. It's completely free to anyone who has a Chester County library card. 19,900 items circulated just for our library alone. And then we had over 120 free programs, no cost to anyone. Most of the programs I funded through grants, or I was able to obtain people that agreed to just volunteer their services or their organization to put on a program for us. For those 100 programs, we have 2,100 attendees at this. This is well surpassing what we've done in the past. On page, there is a chart in here in case I'm a chart person, I like to see it. So on page 9, it starts some charts that we have. This shows, the one chart that's backwards is Libby. It looks like it's going down. If you look at the bottom, we put the totals in backwards. So start from the right, go to the left. But other than that, you can see the steady progression of growth that we have had over the years. And especially I want to point out, when COVID hit and libraries were shut down, me and my staff were there most of the time. Even though the doors were shut, we were there. Page 9.
I think for us it'd be
C13.
Oh, okay,
C13.
sorry about that.
They got numbered differently. In
Gotcha.
C13.
So even in COVID, most of the libraries were closed, but me and my staff, we were there expanding our services, improving things in the library for our patrons. We were offering curbside materials so that people could come to the doors, pick up a bag. That way we never had to stop serving our community, and that is displayed in our statistics. For the whole library system, we retained. We didn't have a significant drop like most libraries did. We actually retained what we were doing within 30 to 40%, and then we saw a further increase at the end of COVID. So we have continued to grow despite the things going on in the world. So what I would like to ask for y'all today is, and many of you know, we are asking the county for funding for an expansion. We would like for y'all to consider a contribution as well to this expansion, as our users are City of Henderson users. We are located in the City of Henderson. We are out of room. We have all these children, they're coming to these story times every week, all these other events that we do for senior citizens, adults, teens, and quite frankly, we're literally just in the middle of the library. When we're in the middle of the library doing these programs, this means that the people coming in not part of the program can't access that part of the library. So then we're actually just serving other people because we don't have the space to accommodate the people that we are also servicing. And we also have an increased demand for some of these materials that we've introduced. Some of the things are the learning kits, STEAM kits. These went over, I got a grant to start that collection, went over way more than we expected. We have 2 shelves. They are literally stacked a good 3 foot high on top of the shelf, both of them, just with kits all over the place. We can't add more, however, because there is nowhere to store them, and we already have them stacked everywhere that we can possibly find. So what we would like to request for y'all is a contribution for expansion. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have about our library today.
Thank you.
What are you looking for? Any, you say a contribution, what's your number you're looking for?
One number that was mentioned to me was 100,000. You know, that would be something that could help with things like furniture, different fixtures, things like that. I mean, obviously with an expansion, we're going to need new shelving. We do have grants we can apply for. I do want to mention that. There are grants that if the county does fund part of this expansion, we will go for and obtain grants. We have some funding ourselves as well that we can use for expanding the materials and things like that. But there will be a need for more furniture, commercial dehumidifier unit, different things like that.
What is the county say? They tabled you a couple of times, I think, haven't they?
Yes, we have been tabled several times. We were tabled earlier this month, and they had said that they would like to wait and see what the city did, to be quite honest. And we were tabled until this upcoming Tuesday.
And I promise you, it's not just y'all.
I know.
It's any issue that comes out, there's gonna be somebody, and I don't mean any disrespect, but somebody from the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd district is gonna always ask what the city does, because they don't, that's every dollar that we spend, $1 they don't have to spend, so it is that. Let me, if the board doesn't mind, let me give you a history of our part of it over the years. And I think Jim was here, and I was here on the city council back in the 90s when it was built. I was in the March service, but I was on the city council. At that time, the city council was approached, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong on this, the city council, we were approached they wanted to where the Bramlett group is now. they wanted to put the library there. And the city council didn't want to do that. The city council, and I don't care what anybody says, because I was on the board when we did it, the city council offered at the time, you think about the 90s, we offered $150,000 to go in halves on building the building. The county gave 150, then plus I think the state, at the time, Steve McDaniel was the state representative, and he came up with money for the inside. And that's how the building got built where it's built. And we did that. And then city gives a very small, we give a small amount, about $4,000. We give a small amount each year. So that's kind of how you got where you're at. And then when I first got elected in 2008, we talked about expansion again. And I remember Mayor Kilzer and myself came out there and we looked at the building. And we were looking at the time, to drop down and have a 3-wall and drop the ceiling down. If you remember, I think the roof down. I think all of us were on there, we talked about that. And that the county, it never did happen. Then when he came back the next time, it was up around 500,000 or some, the figures got pretty high. And the county kind of didn't do it. Just me personally, I want to, I think every one of us wants to make sure the library works. But the county has to tell us what they're going to do. And I think for us, and I think I mentioned to Darryl and I talked about it, and we were looking more, what can we do inside after, kind of like we did with, same thing was, we saw the same thing happening with Dixie Youth. Dixie Youth wanted to build a building, they wanted to build the building they needed. And then the county said, well, what's the city going to do? And we came in and said, we're going to do this, but it's not for the building. We're going to do this for the lighting. If y'all remember, we discussed that, and it was for the lighting. And when Darryl and I talked about it, I said, the city council, I think, would be more advantageous to look at what we can do inside. And make the county do what they need to do. Let's be honest. To me, the county has 2 responsibilities, is the election commission and the library. That's their 2 first responsibilities. And so I think that's one thing they can do, where the city can come in and look at what we can do inside. Because I think, because we're looking at the very same thing here. We're using our ARPA funds to add on this building, but we're going to have to deal with what's inside or down the road. And I think that's what we can do to help y'all. Is look at what you got to need. Furniture. You just talked about stacking stuff up on racks.
Yeah.
Things like that. And I think that's something the city can come in and look when you get, but how can I tell you I'm going to do X if I don't know what your plans are? And what you need from us. And I think you can come say, you come back to city council and say, we're doing this much square footage. Once this gets built, we're going to do this. We need y'all to help us to do this much. And I think most of the city council would be very much.
It's very fair.
You see what I'm saying? I think we'd be very wanting to do that. But we got to know what we got to do.
I'm 100%.
And I agree. And I think all of us know we need the library. We need to do what we need to do. But we got, we just. And I think I throw Tim Crow in the bus here a little bit. I think he made a statement one time: if I give you $100,000, what good is that going to do you if you're $500,000 short where you got to be? And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. But
And you got a bid on that building one time, it was nearly $1 million, didn't you?
So, for the expansion,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, what they're doing right now, there was previously, it's been 12 years trying to get an expansion.
Yes.
And previously it was a 2-story expansion. That has been completely nixed because there is no humanly possible way that's feasible. With the construction costs now for half of what we need, which would just give us enough space to do just adding on for materials. That would be, I think it was $600,000 to get us a full expansion, which gives us what we need for programming as well as for the materials. That is going to be, I think it was 1.2. It is in this packet.
1.4 million.
1.4, thank you. It was 1.2, and then they gave us the update, and it was 1.4.
Yeah, we need everything.
And I'm assuming you're going through the same thing we're going through with expansion of here is dealing with the HVAC units and everything else. So we're dealing with, those things, because I think you're having from my understanding, the humidity problem with the books and things like that you gotta deal with too.
Yes, yeah, we got 60 humidifiers in there that we empty multiple times a day.
Yes. Oh,
The mayor mentioned something that I kind of feel strong about. He talked about it being the election commission is the county's responsibility, the library is the county's responsibility. It is the Chester County Library, and we've helped in the past. It's the city park. I make people mad, probably some in the audience even, but I've always taken the viewpoint, it's the city park, Gene Record Park. We commit a lot of our funds to that, and it's the county library, and that's more, Tim, it's more the county's responsibility. We will help. It's odd that your number caught my attention, the 1.4 million. I asked Jim to do some checking. We've had grants. You can look at the city park, the paved parking lot, the walking trail around down the playground and stuff, the trail through the woods, etc. In the last 10 years, our match, or just our contribution period, not counting what we spent each year to operate the city park, we put over $1.4 million
into
in the city park.
park.
Nothing, it's a city park. We haven't asked the county to put anything in it. It's strict, we take care of the city park. I would like to think the bulk of the county library could be taken care of by the county. You said 53,300 people been to the library and stuff. We don't run a count at the city park, but you can look at all the soccer games. You can look at the Trail of Treats that'll be next Saturday out there. There's always people at the county library. There's always people at the city park. Yes, we will try, but I think the county's got to step up first.
And commit.
That's what they're gonna do.
Commit, yeah.
And I honestly think, Darryl and I had a pretty good conversation on it. We talked about this for a good 30 minutes. And I think our deal was, where the county's gonna go, then what do you need us to do? And I think I told him, I really don't, what I don't want to happen, and I'm not busting some of the guys in the county commission from the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd district, but what I want them to say, they want me to say, we're gonna give you $100,000. And then they're gonna promise you, we do that, they're gonna come back and say, well, the city's gonna give you 100, I'm gonna cut 100 of what we're gonna give you. That's not gonna help you. What I think the city can help you is, once you get your building and say, this is what we're gonna do with the building, if the city would help us do this, this, and this inside to make the building better inside, which would be furniture, shelving, those things you need.
Whatever you need.
What those things you need, we can sit there, when you're sitting with the engineer, we can sit down with the engineer and he can tell us this is what we're gonna need. So we come back and we got a figure of what we can do to help. Because I think we want to.
Yes.
But I think the county's got to pull the trigger.
You want the commitment first, and I.
County's got to tell us what they're going to do.
Yeah.
We've spent all of our ARPA monies.
And what we're going to, Jim, Keith's absolutely right. What we're going to spend is out of our general service money. If the city council decides to do anything, we're going to spend it out of our general service money. But the county's got to tell us what they're going to do. We got to know what you're going to do and how, what that's going to be. And I honestly, I'm a firm believer that I think people might say we're wrong in the city how we deal with our ARPA money. But when we sit down as a budget committee and looked at our ARPA money, we said our first responsibility is what we do. And that's park and recreation, that's dealing with this building, that's dealing with equipment.
Streets and.
Things we did with the ARPA money, I know it's not pretty, but the thing we did with the ARPA money was buy a garbage truck to keep us from raising our sanitation rates. I mean, that's not pretty, looks good for the paper, but it was trying to keep our costs down. And that's what we did with our ARPA money, was things we were obligated to do. And I think that's where the county is. They're obligated to the election commission, they're obligated to the library, and let them, they come back with a plan, then let us supplement that plan to make it better, make you better, I bet something better. And I think if we had that looking at it, we could do that.
Savannah, we support the library.
And
Our children, our grandchildren, us, we go there. We want to help, but the mayor's right. I mean, it's a shot in the dark right now. We don't know what we can do until we know what's gonna be done.
I understand that.
And it could be, and I'll be honest with you, if you sit down and did your plans and the county comes up, and I promise you, dealing with us, every one of us can tell you stuff we deal with, there's gonna be a hole there that you didn't see coming,
Yes.
that you need to be filled. And that's where you come back to us and say, okay, this is what we need your help doing this, and this is what we be looking at doing. And I don't think anybody here is not gonna look at that and wanna do that.
Yeah.
We committed on our ARPA $500,000 to the park as part of a match for a grant for stuff for the park.
Yeah.
After paying $50,000 out of our own pocket for a master plan that you had to have to apply for grants.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And then Dixie Youth, the big thing with Dixie Youth was, and I think we said during that discussion that night was, our fear was on Dixie Youth, was we wanted to help, but we was afraid that if we turn around and say, here's your $100,000, that all of a sudden they're gonna say, well, city gave you 100, so that's all you're gonna get, 100, 200 from us. We wanted the county to commit to that building, then we could commit, because we knew they had to do relighting. They were in serious shape to do relighting. So our 100,000 we gave on that is for relighting. And I think that's the same thing we can do here. If y'all, because I honestly believe you're gonna find, like I say, you're gonna find that hole that's gonna come, and even the county you start to redo it, and you say, this is what we really need y'all guys to do, if you can step up to it. And you'll have a better idea what you want from us. And
And come back to us then.
I think we're committed. We just gotta figure out what it is you really need for, because I think if I just say, well, I'm gonna give you 100,000 tonight on whatever you're doing, I promise you the county will sit there, and I understand, if you're from the first, if I was a county commissioner, first, second, or third district, I go, yeah, that's 100,000, my people in the first, second, third don't have to spend. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it, so.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I think they need to cough up and do what they need to do on your building expansion, then let us come in and supplement what you need to do.
Ain't you the chairman of the committee?
He is not of that committee.
You have
name's
to
been thrown
get
out
out
a few
of your
times
food right
tonight, so can I speak just a bit?
You betcha.
Sir.
We done threw you in a bus 4 times.
This is kind of like a rebuttal witness, since my name is yes, I am the chairman of the budget committee, and I represent the 5th district, which does encompass part of the city. And a little more history, whenever Miss Canada was the librarian, and I think Dwayne was the mayor, there was talk of an expansion then. They even hired an architect because they had a big presentation at the CJC Center, and it was going to be $300,000. The city committed $100,000, the county committed $100,000 over a 2-year period, and the library was supposed to come up with a grant for another $100,000. And we committed that fund kind of in a reserve for a 2-year period. Well, they never could get the grant, so there probably would have been an expansion several years ago, but that kind of fell through. So it's something that we have tried in the past to be committed to. On a personal aspect, I stood up and gave a speech one night that I was against something, but I was for other things. And I agree with the direction this board is going. I agree. We've got to pull the trigger. I'm not on the governmental affairs. That's all been assigned to the governmental affairs committee. I don't know what their train of thought is, because I don't want to be accused of violating the sunshine law. So I have not asked any of them where they're at, but I can just speak for me personally. I am committed to an expansion. I've said that all along. I agree with the decision they have made tonight that we've got to pull the trigger. And y'all heard me say many times in budget meetings, you've heard me say, we've got this money, and I don't want to make a bunch of people mad, but we've got to take care of the county and our county services before we start taking care of nonprofits
Yes.
and other things.
Yes.
And my commitment, solely mine, not violating the sunshine law, is I am committed to some sort of expansion for you. And I hope that's the direction we go.
Yes.
But I agree with the route they're taking also.
Respectfully, I 100% and I do agree with y'all, because I understand there's not
Yeah.
been a commitment for it yet, and I understand that
Yeah.
I have.
But
my
one thing,
goals and I
the
gotta
advantage
do
you've got is now, the advantage y'all got is you've got Jason Rhodes sitting right down, he's on your
He's a
committee.
good one.
That you can twist his ear on a regular basis and get his attention. And he can report back to Jim
Thank you for letting me speak.
and do that.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Well, since we threw you on the bus, I think when you call your name, you have the right to speak. When they call your name. So, but thank y'all for coming, and if any questions you have with us, we'll be more than happy to try to answer.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
And
Mayor.
did want to make sure you did get the report on how we've done, and I will be coming every other month now. I have a girl that she has officially taken over some of my programming so that I can come to y'all's meetings more. So if y'all have any questions on the report I sent, it was just how we're doing and things and how we compare with other libraries, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm happy to
We
answer
look
any
forward to
questions.
seeing you in our meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Samantha.
Thank you.
Next time, anyone else, I've called you once, but I'll call again before we leave this, it's the delegations. Anyone else like to address the board on any city matter? Okay. Next, we'll go to our agenda. The next item is item B. Consider action on the ordinance to amend city zoning to permit electrical vehicle charging stations within the B1, B4, and institutional districts as permitted use. I'll let Brent go over that first before I open the public meeting. Brent.
Yes, sir. We had a utility, I think, approach us and request an area that they were looking to put some of these EV charging stations. We looked at different zones and looked at the zoning requirements or regulations. We didn't have anything that addressed a commercial type electric vehicle charging station. So the areas that they were looking to put them in were more the commercial areas because it was going to be a commercial sell the power to charge the vehicle. So where we have the most concentration of people and the most commercial would be in those three zones. The Plan Commission met on this, approved this, and sent it forward to you. Basically, like I said, it would be in any commercial zone, and this is a commercial type use, not a residential that would be at your house, but this would be something that you could purchase electricity for your vehicle at these locations.
Before we turn it over to the board, I'll open it up for a public hearing. Does anybody in the public like to address this ordinance before we bring it back to the board?
Just for information sharing, could you kind of give us an example of the places you're talking about?
Well,
For
the
example,
initial,
so everybody knows.
right, the initial one was on Front Street,
Mm-hmm,
and that parking lot on Front Street is a city parking lot.
right,
Of course, Front Street, I guess you would say east of Front Street and all the downtown area is in a B2 zone. So this would actually not be allowed in the zone where we don't have any, or don't require any parking per se. So the parking lot at Front Street to the west of Front Street is zone B1.
mm-hmm,
Institutional would be basically where Freed-Hardeman University, I think, maybe close to the Pentecostal church, and that area is institutional. And out by the junior high around the schools, although, and Northchester. So those are some institutional areas. Your B4 areas basically are highway business. They run up and down 45 and 100, except for where general business takes over in the older part of town.
Since we got a public hearing, does anybody would like to address this in our public hearing? Seeing none, at this time I'll close the public hearing, and then we'll turn it over to the city council. One of the reasons that the institutional was added to this was the university contacted us And I think y'all all know they're doing a parking lot where the old Sigma building was. And they were very interested in putting it there. So as we did this in the planning commission, we added institutional to that. And also the schools and everywhere else, because, you know, high schools, elementary schools and things like that, you could very well be in the same boat, so.
And since this has come out, we've had other people show interest possibly in some industrial type zones that may want some of these out by factories that could use that either for their vehicles of their workers or maybe use it as a commercial type for people visiting, or at least they have shown some interest in that. So that may be an amendment that might come in later if we see there's a need for that. But you figure there's probably 25 to 30,000 vehicles come through Henderson any day. So if you take 5% of those eventually become electric vehicles, and 1% of those need to charge in a given day,
That's a lot.
you got 12 or 15 vehicles that's gonna need to be charged somewhere in Henderson every day.
I think when they brought it to the planning commission, it was part of that program of TVA and.
Southwest
Southwest.
has already sent us some, where are we at on that? They never have come back.
Well, Jerry reviewed the agreement, and we had some disagreements on some of the liability waivers they had in their contract. And I think the attorneys came to a standstill, on a Mexican standoff, for lack of a better word, because nobody's willing to give. Basically, there was a waiver in there, Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, that basically waived all their liability whatsoever. And we sort of had a problem with that, so.
Yeah.
So, and Jerry can maybe remember and explain it a little better.
Probably not.
But that's where we were going back and forth, and you redlined some issues and sent it back to their attorney, and they wasn't willing to agree to make the changes, so it sort of just came to a screeching halt, and that's where it's still sitting.
And I think the university was reaching out to them too.
The university.
And I think Southwest was only wanting to do so much. And then I think the university reached out to us because they were looking at putting in that area there too. So I don't.
Yeah, I think the Southwest Electric only had probably one plan for one here in town.
I think two.
Well, two chargers, but one location. One location. And I think when Freed Hardman expressed interest, they were weighing the options, Front Street or Freed Hardman's new parking lot up here. So I think that sort of put everything on hold on ours until they figured out exactly which site would work better. So I think that's where we're at. And as I said, I haven't heard from, their side now in 60 days.
It's two things in summary that I recall. One was subrogation, which is how you deal with insurance coverage. The other was that property, though it's city property, the business component there, the charging stuff is not really anything the city's going to be involved with. But I recall, I think the contract kind of allocated some liability exposure and coverage issues on us when it's just property sitting there. And our thoughts were, if you have the hardware and the equipment and the manpower that you're manning it, you should be insuring that rather than us.
I think when the university approached us, well, the only thing we told the university was that would be great if they want to do that. We just asked that it would be for the public, that it would be so anybody in the public could use it, and that they were more willing to do that. So, and which we thought honestly where they were going to put it was more visible than any other place. So I don't know what the status is with the university.
I haven't heard anything since that was
But
communicated.
we still got, like I say, we still got to get our ordinance in place to, when it comes. So, pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to amend the municipal zoning ordinance to permit electric vehicles charging stations within B1, B4, and I districts for permitted use.
I have that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Barber,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Butler,
Yes.
Mr. Rhodes,
Yes.
Mr. Manus.
Yes.
All voted in favor, one absent.
One absent, there's one absent. We will have to do the second reading next month. So bring it back in front of the board on, next month for the second reading. Okay, next item on the agenda is item E, consider approval of resolution authorizing the city to apply for the TE Partners Property Conservation Grant to protect the city property. Jim?
Each year, our insurance carrier, PE Partners, has a couple different grant programs we try to participate in. And this one is the Property Conservation Grant. In previous years, to be honest, first year we applied for this grant, we actually got partial payment on the cameras at the city park, the surveillance cameras. Last year, we applied and got cameras at the Record Drive facility for the utility department. So this year, there was a discussion, and the plan is to go ahead and try to install security cameras at the maintenance building. And so that's the plan. I think we can apply, I think up to $8,000 expenditure, and it's a 50-50 grant. So we may be out $4,000 if the system costs the full $8,000. I don't remember exactly what the utility department's system cost last year, but it was close to that number. So I don't have a research cost, and I haven't done that yet. Apply for the grant, then we'll have to be awarded, and then we'll have to go back and actually make the purchase and get the equipment installed.
It's always a win-win, because it's stuff we were gonna buy anyway, so get somebody to pay for handling it, so it's a good plan.
So we just have to pass a resolution saying that we are going to participate in the program and match it 50% if we get awarded.
I'll make that motion.
Have a motion
Accept the
approved.
resolution.
I have a motion to approve the resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Manning?
Yes.
All vote in favor, one absent.
Since it's a resolution, the resolution passes, we're going forward with that. Next item is item F, consider approval of the automatic aid agreement between the fire department and the Trent County Fire Department.
Obviously, there's a lot of red ink on that, so.
I think I hate to throw this on Jerry, since Jerry's sitting back with all the red ink. That means we gotta do some work on it.
Yeah. You in here.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Okay.
This is you got, I think I failed it, I think if I submitted, I failed this test, so go ahead.
Well, Jim got with me Monday, I believe, with a proposed agreement, and in addition to what he provided me some comments that the folks at MTAS had provided him. So hey, can you look at this and try to incorporate in some of the points that the MTAS people were kind of looking at. So I think yesterday I kind of jumped in and started trying to get an understanding of mutual aid agreements and interlocal agreements. And, those terms are interchangeable by and large. What I was doing in that regard, I looked at the statute, and I looked over the agreement, which pretty much covers the points in a general sense. And then I started looking around at where I can maybe learn a little, as the Chinese say, reverse engineering on if I had to draft something. So did a little looking around the state at what was going on. So once I got all that kind of in my head, I started, and the red ink is a product of my computer's red line, where I added stuff in or deleted stuff. I don't know if you've got a clean version of it, but it's a little easier to read. I hope, Chief, I hope you got one. Okay. Anyway, what I did was I tried to address some of the issues that the MTAS people and Jim pointed out. I then did what lawyers do. I kind of looked at the contract a lot. There's some general terms that all contracts should have, and I worked those kind of in the back end. It kind of address questions that you don't expect to be answered, but sometimes come up, and like it's good to have them being addressed. What I did leave in the agreement
was somewhat a whole in terms of things that kind of deal with the operational side of this issue, an automatic response. And that's because as a lawyer, we're not well versed in that. The fire department people are. So where I got to was you got a contract that kind of introduces what you're doing, identifies areas by exhibit. The back end of it deals with just your general items. We put some things in there, such as a term, how long is it going to last, and how's it renewed, can it be terminated? If circumstances come up, can it be amended? How is it amended? How frequently? Who's involved in the process? Where I left the blanks were how detailed the fire department people get with respect to the operation side of this. The dispatch, how's that work? Does it go out to both entities? Does it go out to one and the other one? The one that gets it is responsible for rounding up the other crews. I don't know if the two fire departments have communication systems that are identical or compatible. They're not. Who's in command on site when you get to a fire call? Those things probably need to be fleshed out. How reporting of those calls works when you have two entities. I got to note that from a staffing standpoint, the city didn't want to be in a position to where you make a call, for example, in the county on an automatic response, and you clear firemen out. You got to have somebody here in town manning in the event that you have another incident that you got to address. And then we put just a provision in about the scope, saying this just deals with an automatic response. Different types of interlocal mutual aid agreements. This version, an automatic response, they're out there where they deal with unintended, unexpected consequences where you may have an incident. With respect to fire service, where the fire grows and you need more resources and manpower, you then have a mutual aid agreement that says where you get that help. The third version is it's when a governmental entity, in essence, relinquishes its responsibility to another entity to provide that service. So I would hope that if the chief is on point on this, that they make a decision on how much they want to flesh out the operational side of it, because I think they do that a lot better than they do at this point. So I can deal with questions about the form of the contract and such if you have them today or when you want to get back. But in terms of the nuts and bolts of what happens from the time you get a call for an automatic response to when everybody comes out to the station.
Can I just do a recommendation if the board is willing to do this? I'd like to do a committee that will be part of the chief rotor. I've asked if Alderman Butler and Alderman Rose will be on that committee to sit down with them on what you have now and come back next month with that. And then you can get with Jim and Jerry on questions. If you got questions, y'all have mind doing that?
No?
I think y'all have been out there before and on some other issues, and I think y'all kind of get just what we're doing and to come back with other words, less red than we got now. And I think y'all guys can do, if y'all will work, if y'all could do this, it's okay with y'all. You set up time with them and y'all come back with what y'all want to do.
Thanks, Randy.
And make a recommendation back. I appreciate it. Help us a lot. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is item G, consider passage of an ordinance and resolution amending the water tap fees, water and gas service fees, connection fees, and reconnect fees. Darrell, why don't you start it off?
We've had the same fees for quite some time now, and looking at the rate that materials are going up and the cost of materials, the average we're charging like a 3/4 inch water tap. We're, actually, our cost today, without some of the anticipated cost increases that they've already told us are coming down the line, 3/4 inch is costing us about $858 just in materials and labor to put in a meter, and that's pretty much on average. Some, we spend a lot more time than the average 3 hours on. Currently, we're spending about, we've got a current tap fee for a 1 inch of $900. Our average cost for a 1 inch materials labor is running around $13.74. And for a 2 inch meter, we're currently charging inside the city $1,200, and our current cost, based on the amount that the meters and things have increased, is about $37.93 for a 2 inch tap. 2 inch corporation stops and things like that have gone up by 3 times over the last year alone. So material cost is getting just to the point that we're losing on every tap we make. And so we wanted to try to correct that and get some adjustments in the current ordinance to accommodate the additional costs that we're having to incur to do taps. And on the water side, we've got some, in the package you handed out there, what we plan to do is go to a standard, like engineering drawing, that where everything gets yoke locks. What kind of yoke is a resetter, and that makes it a lot easier going forward in the future. If you have to change a meter, test a meter, have to pull a meter for somebody's keeps turning on the water, and you have to pull the meter out, then the way we currently or have been doing them in the past is like straight-in connections. And so when you fill up that gap or pull it in tight to keep it from leaking, you're pulling either on the customer service or you're pulling on the meter. And a lot of times we have damage done, by a plumber or whatever, taking them in and out. So going forward in the future, it is our intent not to set a new meter set without a reset. And that's pretty typical in just about everywhere. We started using those several years ago. The cost of those even has gone up some. So what we were proposing is currently the tap fee for, I think, is it $800 for the 1 inch? And we were looking at increasing that to $1,650. It's $900 on a 1 inch, and our current cost is around $1,300, and so we're going to like $2,250 on the 1 inch, and on the 2 inch is currently $1,200, and we're going to $3,000, which really doesn't cover the complete cost of the 2 inch, but we don't set that many 2 inch meters.
Plus pouring fees.
If it's like a city street, or if it's a, like a county road, a lot of times we can use our boring, piercing tool and it'd go under a very narrow street. But anytime that we have a tap that's on a state highway, and typically state highways are, have a lot of cable, have a lot of, fiber optic, those things are becoming more and more in the ground, and typically, if you're boring a longer distance, things like that. Here, if we do it with our piercing tool, you get a starter hole and where it goes. Sometimes it never gets to where you need to be. Sometimes you have to do it multiple times. And if we get a long bore under a state highway, we typically get somebody like Jackson Boring Service. We actually get caught in some of those people like that in the past to do them, and they can do a directional bore, so they can, they can pothole and spot cables and all this, and we know what depth we are, we know exactly where we are, and less possibility of damaging other facilities. So it would be typical that we would try to do all the short bores and in the city where we know where the facilities are and all that in-house, and then if we were going under a state highway, whatever, the customer would bear the cost of.
Contract that out. Yeah. Glad I'm not gonna need anything like.
We have a sheet also on the gas, and if you look at the sheet, we've got a number of gas services that we run, and by the time you buy the meter, buy the pipe, buy the tracer wire, set up, and, you know, excessive flow valves and that, we have a charge to the customer, and then we have a typical, you know, based on what we're doing for installation costs now, we have a typical on gas, we've had a typical loss just about across the board on every one we've done. Based on what we've collected.
Any questions from the board?
And just to give you an idea, like a month and a half ago, we ordered like some 1-inch meters and some 2-inch meters, and at the time, they were ordered the 1-inch for like $308. Today's cost is $393, and the 2-inch has gone from $771 to $1,288 just for the meter. And you know, it's getting where it's very difficult to, you know, if I call a vendor today and get a price today and give them a PO today, then this is the cost. If I wait and do it tomorrow, next week, or even a couple of days away, it's whatever their cost will be plus whatever their markup is. People are not quoting like things long-term like they used to.
Is there some discussion about also raising, I noticed in the ordinance, of course, you've got the sewer taps still listed at the current, there's no change in those. Is there consideration of doing that also?
We were looking at that to see what the best way to do that was, and of course, the obvious best absolute way to do it would be to do it with our own forces. We don't have enough personnel and things to continue doing them. But the first picture on the handout was a tap that was made, I believe that was up here on Crook Avenue, and it looks like the plumber did a hammer tap, and it looks like they busted. The second picture shows the whole section of pipe that was replaced. They probably busted that when they dug into it. It wasn't repaired properly. And then the third is looking at going to a standard design. Everybody, instead of making a hole in the pipe, breaking the pipe, splitting the whole section, is make everybody cut out a short section, cut in a YT, and there would be 2 fern cones in the YT, and then stub it to the property with a 6-inch pipe. And that's pretty standard in a lot of cities to do it that way. JA does everyone. They stop their own crews from putting a saddle on a sewer main and actually coring that main and making a tap. They cut it, a section out and put in the fern cones. And I talked to a number of plumbers here that their concern was, you know, even though we've got records on a lot of our sewer lines and things like that, as it turned out like we did with Gray Hall, once you dig down on it, it may not be what we said it was. And so, you know, the best way I think to do that would be to charge, you know, more for a sewer tap than we're currently charging now, and actually go to the utility supplying the YT and the fern coat couplings, and we can keep various sizes, so once they dig down on it, they would know that the material is going to be available. Because a lot of these items you can't go to Simmons and get, you can't go to Lowe's and get, and so we would keep the materials, and then we would want to make
The tap fee
sure
would include the materials.
the tap fee would include just those limited items and materials. And then they would be responsible for the pipe from the, you know, to the property line and onto the facility they're running the sewer for and everything like they are today. The only difference is we're gonna tell them exactly how they're gonna tap it. We're gonna make sure that when you expose it and when you tap it, somebody has got to be there. So that we're not actually doing the work, but we are there to make sure that they install it properly, make sure they bed it properly, make sure that they didn't split a piece of pipe that they're gonna cover up for us to have to come back and repair later.
Do they still, do the gravel or the sand and all
Right,
that?
currently, we're at $1,000, we have $1,000 tap fee for the sewer, and we had like $1,500 if it was outside the city, since we don't have any sewer outside the city. As far as the ordinance correction for sewer, I would recommend that we take the outside city fee completely out of the ordinance, and then do $1,500 for inside the city, and that would include the YT, that would include the Furco couplings, and that would get them away from our main. And then we would make sure somebody would, the way we would write it, would make sure somebody was on site, you know, in our policy when they come in and make an application, is that make sure that somebody, they knew that somebody had to be physically there watching them, and nothing gets covered before we look at it. And that way we make sure it's properly vetted and we won't have any problems going forward. We have too many cases where we have problems with sewer lines. Some of them, you know, that causes a collapse in the line and wind up digging down. And a lot of times when a plumber goes out to try to tap it, they'll wind up splitting the pipe, and we'll wind up spending more time actually repairing than what we would have if we'd have done it ourselves. And we'll try to get away from that.
So basically, if it was a new resident, it'd be $1,650 for a 3/4 inch water tap and $1,500 for the sewer tap.
That's correct. And typically, if a house is torn down, it already has a sewer service, and the service is already established, water and sewer, and typically when they clear a lot and build a new home, say on a lot, water and sewer is already there. This is only going to affect new construction. And if it's in a subdivision or something like that where they're going to be building multiple houses and platting a whole new plat, I would, you know, want them to actually, when we approve the plans, to have the sewer and the water stubbed to the property line when they actually lay the water or sewer to start with, and that would tremendously decrease our costs and the plumber's cost to the builder, whoever's building on that lot.
Any other questions from the council? What's the pleasure of the board?
We can't pass this ordinance on 2 readings tonight anyway.
No, sir. No,
I
sir.
wonder if we put what you're proposing for the sewer side of it, do we need to get one ordinance that does both all at one time instead of piecemeal? I'm just asking that question.
Well, the ordinance, it's like 1800-106. It actually has those water tap fees and all that in there, and you know, I would recommend that we go ahead and modify that sewer and just have the one change in ordinance, not come back with a sewer change, just do it with this one ordinance change.
So you're recommending to amend the proposed ordinance to change the sewer tap to $1,500, with the city providing the T and the Furco couplings.
And the couplings.
The city would provide those materials as part of that tap.
Right.
So that would be amendment to the ordinance in front of you by changing, get rid of inside and outside city, make all sewer taps $1,500 instead of $1,000. And then it would also have another line there that said the city would provide the T and the Furco couplings to the owner or the plumber, whoever you want to say. So that would be a change. But with that change, if y'all approve that, I think we go ahead and pass this on one reading if y'all are comfortable with the rest of it. So that's up to y'all. And in this, of course, 19209 does change the fee we do charge for gas services. It does change the existing policy. We've had a resolution that gives gas customers, new gas customers, certain footage of service lines. And that's what he was mentioning about the gas. I don't think you have that in your packet that you got laid in front of you. But we're losing money on every service we put in on gas. I think Alicia's got,
In the month alone of August, we lost $5,100 in gas alone, just
trying to cover materials and the cost of doing gas services.
Just
Based on
putting
our
services
current
in.
policies. Of course, there's no tap fee involved necessarily. Under the new policy, they would pay $200, and then they get 200 feet of gas service line free if they put in a heating unit. And then after that, they would pay $3 a foot. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alicia, does that sound right?
that's correct.
Measured from the gas main to their meter.
To their meter at the house. So we are changing that. In the previous policies, they've been able to get to how many feet
They
total?
could get up to 400 feet, depending on what they put on gas. They got 100 feet credit for each thing, they put up to 4. And it was a $50 fee, and that was it. And that didn't even, a lot of people had gas lines put in for $50, and the meter alone was $376.
So they're paying $200 plus the cost of the gas meter, plus $3 a foot after the first 200 feet, is what the new policy would be. And that's part of this ordinance. We're taking it out of the resolution that we used to use and actually putting it in the ordinance to make it clear.
It's the cost of doing business.
It's just the world we're in. And, we've been talking about how little.
It's kind of a tough situation. I guess as we always say, the retired school teacher on Galbraith, that we're asking her to pick up the tab for the new stuff. And that's what you're at, and that's what we're doing. With losing money, when we do all the taps and do these things here, we lose money, so we have to get it back. So what we do is existing companies already paid for their taps, we're putting it back on them.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we do.
We don't do a lot of taps, do we?
A lot of.
No, water taps, we did, last year we did 11. So far this year, we've done 3. And 21, 20, we did 16. And then 19, 20, we did 21.
How many gas,
And
how many
most
new
of
gas
these are, of
services
course,
do
new water.
you have gas services there?
No, I just got the ones from August. We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in August.
In gas services, we do a lot of gas services.
Yes.
Because everybody,
Of course, that time of year, everybody's trying to get them in before winter.
everybody's trying to get on gas for the winter time, so they're putting the pressure on.
Well, plus our water, we haven't grown yet, so we're just in a, we don't have.
Everybody's already got
nowhere
Everybody's
really
already
to
got the
go.
water that's got
Right,
water.
right.
So, and then we got very few subdivisions getting built right now because of, but yeah,
Price
it's
of
water.
materials and-
It costs a little bit. What's the pleasure of the board?
How much more would it cost for the taps to a new home? About how much money are you talking about?
Garrett?
Well, currently for a water tap, 3/4 inch for typical water, it's currently at 800 and it would go to 1650, so it would be an increase of about, the difference between 1650 and 800.
It does.
But materials,
205.
materials are really triple.
And then the 500 on certain.
Is the material in that price?
So 1,300.
Materials in the.
1350 difference.
About $1,350 difference.
As long as it is what it is.
That's for water.
Yeah.
And most all of this is just, it's been a while since the fee has been increased, plus, we've seen, tripling of prices for most materials in this industry. And, I called around when we had this main break out here at, on East Main the other day, and most of the suppliers that we're normally doing business with don't have any ductile iron pipe, which is what you would put in a casing. And so, everybody's quoting us, 8 months out on real small quantities, 14 months on larger quantities. A plastic pipe, is a C900, glass 150 is about 4 weeks out. Everything is, and brass is almost impossible to get. And, you know, when you make a water tap, you've got a brass saddle, you've got a brass corporation stop, you've got brass fittings that transition between your corporation stop and your poly service line, and then you've got all the brass involved in your meter set itself. So it's there's a market now that's just changing by the day.
In the last 2 years, how much you said it's cost us percentage-wise, just in our materials we have to purchase?
It's gone up threefold from what it was 2 years ago. You know, back several years, well, 2 years ago, a 3/4 inch water meter would cost you about $45. Today, that's $197.
I will confess, when I looked at this to start with, I thought it was a big increase. I was scared when you put the sewer with the water, how bad it was gonna be, but I think the total is a reasonable increase. It hurts a little, but it's not gonna impact but a few people based on the number of taps we're doing. We don't do that. We expect everybody, as the mayor's pointed out, everybody across town to pay for it.
It puts the cost where the burden is.
Yeah.
I think I can really do it.
And we've also looked at towns around, we've gotten how much they're charging for stuff, and our numbers.
It's
are-
aligning with their,
Yes.
They've had.
And they're all doing the same thing as we are too, is looking at their numbers, we've all been
Yeah.
talking and.
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Have a motion to approve the ordinance on the first reading. Do I have a second?
Second?
Have a second, any discussion on the ordinance? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Rhodes?
Yes.
Mr. Mann?
Yes.
All those in favor, one absent.
It passes on the first reading, we'll bring it back from the board next month on the second reading.
And you'll have all those changes in
Yes.
15.
We'll have all those changes worked out. Now, there's a resolution that's a separate document, starting on G4. So, we're
That's
not
the gas
leaving.
fee.
Huh?
Is that the gas fee? I thought we put this in the ordinance.
No, this is other things, so we'll let Alicia explain.
Oh, I see.
No, this is not, which one am I going, okay.
The same line item, there's an
Okay, I
ordinance
see.
and a resolution involved. at the
All right.
same time.
Right. The only thing that's really changing in this is, the after-hours fee. We charge $35 for anything that they have to do, where we have to send somebody, the on-call person after hours to do something. We've asked that, it's $35 right now. We're asking to go to $50 just to help cover the fuel cost and cost of sending a person out after hours to help cover that. And also on,
G5.
and right above that, the reestablishing services. Currently, it's $50 if you get cut off for non-payment. We're asking to raise that to $75, mainly because we end up having to go 3 or 4 times to that one person's house. We go to turn it off, we go to turn it back on, nobody's there. We go once or twice after that, till we finally get it all, the money collected and get it turned back on. So it's going to be in,
We can't turn it on if there's nobody there, right?
correct.
What's the pleasure of the board on the resolution?
It seems like a reasonable increase, given our additional cost of doing it. So I'll make a motion that we accept the resolution adopting the utility billing collection changes.
Have that motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, this is a resolution, roll call vote.
Mr. Barber?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Rhodes? Mr. Manning?
Yes.
All those in favor, one absent.
Since it's a resolution, that passes. Okay, next item on the agenda is item H, approval of the sale of extra inventory on the Itron AMR meter heads to community in Georgia.
We looked at metering and we looked at some additional equipment we needed in our system, and we looked at the number of the AMR, the ERCs, as the Itron would call them, that transmits the meter reading from the meter to the truck as it drives by. When we put the system in initially, our records on a lot of locations and things were not, didn't know whether it was 1 inch, 3/4 inch, what sizes, and then there were the inventory of meters. We included all of the, the inactive accounts. We just included all the meters that we had. After we got through with all the active meters, and we did not put meters in locations where buildings may have been combined, where they had like 2 or 3 meters, and now one tenant has the whole building and things. And there's a number of locations where we have inactive meters out there that are still the old meters, so we didn't need the AMRs. We had 720 of these ERCs left. We contacted our supplier who originally provided the equipment. It said since so many months had passed by since we put in the system, and they prorated the warranty and basically said that they would give us 60% of what we paid for them in basic exchange. In the process of talking to them, Augusta, Georgia, found out that we had surplus. They have a project that they're looking at a year or so out of getting the units they need to complete the project. And so they contacted me, and they wanted to purchase our surplus. And we had the 720. We were going to keep 220. And I don't think we'll build that many houses or put that many water services in. And every year we keep these, they go down in value. And so Augusta, Georgia had offered us exactly what we paid for them, and the 504 ERCs will net us, they're $66 a piece is what we paid for them, and it'll net us $33,264. And it's their municipality, it's one city to another, and that's what we're asking the board to do, is get permission to sell them. Those do not let them stay with us until they're not have any value.
I make a motion that we go ahead and allow you to make that sale.
Have a motion to approve the sale, do I have a second?
Yes. Second.
Have a second, all those, any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by aye. All opposed, equal to no, motion carried. Next item is item I, consider approval of the purchase of a drone for the police department. Tim?
All right, I can't see y'all, I'll stand up. Chief Davidson couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to present this. This is the discretion of the board. This may be just for informative purposes only, honestly. Is, if you remember, when we started back the budget meetings in January this year, we asked for the purchase of a drone. Y'all did approve us $8,500 to purchase a drone. At the time, we've been looking at some. As everything, prices have increased. We have become much more versed on drone technology than we were then. We've reached out to other departments, we've reached out to other suppliers. So now what we're wanting to do, the drone that we had looked at was going to be higher anyway. And it was basically what you would call a beginner model drone. Most agencies that started out with this drone ended up upgrading the drone that we want to do. In June, y'all approved the ARPA money, and y'all also gave all department heads the authority to go ahead and make their purchases from that money, which we could have done $8,500 after July 1st. We're wanting to purchase a different drone platform, It gives us much more capabilities, the ability to fly in more adverse weather conditions, spotlight equipment, speaker equipment, a better thermal imaging system. We're gonna need about $8,200 more dollars. So what Chief Davison is wanting to do is take that money, combine it with $8,500 that you've already approved from the drug fund, that by statute, he has discretionary control of. So whatever the pleasure of the board, this may be just more informative, that's what we're wanting to move forward with.
I agree, I think that's more informative than anything.
I think that was the question, I think the only question we had is since, I think is technically we purchased more than $4,000, we have to go in front of the board, but it's through the drug fund, which is discretionary by the chief. So since we had Jerry here tonight, we was gonna throw that on Jerry and see, does that even have to be a motion? And he gave me the nod, so.
And we've also got the competitive, by statute, by policy, we've got the competitive quotes. And just for more informative information, is the competitive quotes we got. One of them that we're gonna go with is a retired captain for the Kentucky Highway Patrol who's a sales rep. He has been phenomenal with us because we're drone infants here. He has been very, very phenomenal with us and given us a lot of terminology. Yeah,
He did say it had thermal imaging.
It does have thermal imaging. Yes, and he's been very